We're taking the fight to the drug dealers and drug pushers, which frankly I think is the #1 way we're going to stop drugs.
4:16 a.m., Brevard County, Florida, multi-agency assault teams executed simultaneous entry on a nondescript industrial warehouse previously listed as agricultural storage. 2 FBI Bearcats breached the outer perimeter fence. Black SUVs and DEA vans, lights off and plates removed, sealed every exit within 12 seconds. Before vehicles came to a complete stop, the door team deployed a 40-pound hydraulic ram. One strike collapsed the reinforced steel door inward. Interior illumination from weapon-mounted lights revealed immediate structural anomalies, floor-to-ceiling pallets wrapped in opaque black plastic, walls clad in welded ballistic plate, overhead surveillance arrays, and industrial-grade ventilation running at full capacity. Air sampling registered elevated volatile organic compounds consistent with recent chemical processing. Initial assessment by on-scene commanders: this was no transient stash house. It was a fortified, active production and distribution node operating undetected inside the continental United States. If you're ready to see how a hidden criminal empire almost outgrew the entire United States, hit like, subscribe to Military Power, and keep watching. This one goes all the way to the end. Entry teams declared the building secure in 3 minutes and 41 seconds. Yet the silence that greeted them carried none of the hollow stillness typical of an abandoned site. Instead, the air itself felt recently occupied, warmer than the pre-dawn chill outside by a steady 6 degrees, laced with the unmistakable bite of solvents still drifting from ventilation ducts that had only just begun their slow wind-down cycle. Machines had been running here hours earlier, and the structure itself seemed to exhale the residue of that labor. Agents moved methodically between aisles, formed by pallets towering 15 feet high, each shrink-wrapped in opaque black plastic and bearing stenciled labels that declared perfectly legitimate contents: organic fertilizer, industrial cleaning compound, horticultural soil amendment. Manifest weights printed on the exterior, however, defied physics. Crates supposedly containing powdered plant nutrients registered at over 1,800 pounds apiece, numbers that belonged to heavy machinery rather than garden supplies. When the first blade sliced through multiple layers of deception, rows of dense, vacuum-sealed bricks emerged, aligned with tolerances that only automated equipment could achieve. Field reagent tests required less than 90 seconds to confirm the substance. A synthetic alkaloid analog designated internally as 70, derived from kratom, but chemically re-engineered to deliver potency levels 70 times higher than anything available through legal channels. As additional pallets surrendered their contents under forensic cutting teams, the running estimate climbed with alarming speed, crossing 50,000 pounds, then 70, before stabilizing at an almost incomprehensible 92,000 pounds, an amount that instantly rewrote agency record books for this emerging class of narcotic. What began as a seizure quickly transformed into recognition of active, high-volume production. Beyond the storage aisles stretched stainless steel conveyor lines still dusted with trace residue, flanked by multi-tier drying racks capable of handling hundreds of trays simultaneously. Industrial mixers large enough to process bakery dough on a commercial scale sat beside vacuum chambers engineered for rapid compression sealing, their stainless surfaces wiped to a mirror finish that reflected weapon lights with cold precision. Every station revealed the same meticulous discipline. Tools returned to shadowboard outlines, floors swept clean of even the smallest particulate, waste containers emptied and lined with fresh bags. Nothing suggested the chaotic improvisation common to most clandestine laboratories. This was assembly line manufacturing executed with standards closer to pharmaceutical-grade facilities than criminal enterprise. A single laminated chart mounted beside the packaging bench delivered the next escalation. Color-coded adhesive dots, red, green, blue, yellow, adorned the corner of every pallet in identical positions, and the chart translated those colors into a distribution matrix that spanned multiple states. red routes feeding Georgia corridors, green destined for Texas, blue tracing North Carolina arteries, yellow terminating in New York metropolitan nodes. Departure cycles appeared in precise military time blocks, rotation intervals calculated to avoid pattern recognition, estimated transit durations factored for weather, and way station closures. When analysts ran the listed tracking numbers through every federal cargo registry, the result returned absolute zero. None of the shipments, neither inbound nor outbound, had ever passed through regulated channels. The entire supply chain had been engineered to exist in darkness. Within the first hour on scene, the supervisory agents reached an assessment that rippled immediately up the chain of command. This warehouse had never served as mere temporary storage or transshipment point. It operated as the primary processing and redistribution heart of a covert interstate network, moving product at industrial volume, shielded by false manifests, armored architecture, and operational security that rivaled nation-state programs. The discovery in Brevard County, Florida, was no longer a regional narcotics case. It had just become a national security event. While evidence technicians cataloged the production floor, a two-man FBI evidence response team noticed that the rear wall's steel panels aligned with tolerances tighter than architectural code required and exhibited no visible welds or fasteners. When pressure was applied along the vertical seam, the entire 8-foot section flexed a fraction of an inch, an anomaly that no legitimate warehouse would ever display. A flat pry bar inserted into the hairline gap produced a soft hydraulic hiss as the panel swung inward on concealed hinges, exposing a narrow corridor lined with multiple layers of military-grade acoustic dampening material thick enough to swallow automatic weapons fire. The passageway terminated in a windowless chamber, illuminated by low-wattage red bulbs, a space that contained no product, yet proved infinitely more valuable. 3 folding tables formed a command island beneath hanging maps that traced maritime routes in crimson grease pencil from Southeast Asian cultivation zones through Caribbean transshipment ports into Gulf of Mexico entry points, while adjacent overlays documented air cargo hops executed by freshly registered shell companies operating Beechcraft King Airs and Convair freighters through secondary airports where customs presence rarely exceeded 2 officers per shift. Every port of entry, every free trade zone relay, every container repackaging stop had been annotated with dwell times, inspection probabilities, and alternate routing contingencies. Laminated supplier directories hung from the walls like corporate org charts, listing offshore entities that changed names every fiscal quarter, yet retained identical registered agent addresses in Panama and Singapore, a pattern that screamed single controlling authority. Cargo logs revealed containers that entered the United States labeled as ceramic tiles or palm oil derivatives, then vanished into bonded warehouses long enough for paperwork to be rewritten before resurfacing under new bills of lading. The deception was not opportunistic. It was systemic, repeatable, and built to survive the loss of any individual node. At the chamber's far end, a vault-style door reinforced with triple deadbolts and magnetic shear locks required 38 minutes and a rotary saw to defeat. Beyond it lay an armory that transformed the operation's threat profile from narcotics trafficking to domestic paramilitary capability. Custom AR pattern rifles with registered full auto sears filled wall racks in perfect sequence, suppressors already torqued to specification. Drawers contained Glock pistols converted with switch blocks, each paired with extended magazines and threaded barrels. A tripod-mounted M2 HB.50 caliber commanded the corner, its belt already chambered and aligned to a concealed firing slit that would have enfiladed the main entrance corridor. Crates of linked ammunition and composition C4 sat beside remote detonators wired to pressure plates and motion sensors, contingencies clearly designed to deny evidence in the event of overwhelming breach. A side alcove housed the network's identity forge, stacks of burner phones segregated by activation month, Encrypted mesh routers running custom firmware and filing cabinets filled with driver licenses, commercial driver endorsements, and warehouse permits issued to individuals whose social security numbers traced back to deceased infants in 3 different decades. The ecosystem was self-contained and self-regenerating. The final revelation waited on a steel desk beneath a single gooseneck lamp. One unassuming black laptop protected by full disk encryption that took the forensic team 11 minutes to bypass. Once inside, layered directories unfolded like blueprints of an entire shadow corporation. Real-time distribution maps covering 17 states, cryptocurrency laundering cycles segmented into sub-$10,000 transactions, GPS track logs that manually rerouted convoys around every known license plate reader and weigh station camera on the interstate system, recruitment rosters with training completion dates, and quarterly risk assessments that studied federal task force rotation schedules the way legitimate companies study competitors. By the time the on-site commander received the preliminary data dump, the realization was no longer tactical. The warehouse in Brevard County was not a facility within a network. It was the network's central nervous system, and it had just begun to transmit. The instant the laptop's final encryption layer shattered at 9:47 a.m. Eastern, the entire investigation detonated beyond the borders of Florida with a velocity that outran even the fastest helicopter in the federal inventory. A single classified burst transmission, encrypted under a one-time pad generated 30 seconds earlier, left the Brevard County Mobile Command Post and arrived simultaneously in every FBI resident agency, every DEA state-level fusion cell, every Homeland Security Investigations field office, and every Joint Terrorism Task Force node across the continental United States. 17 minutes later, analysts who had been chasing ghosts for years found themselves staring at matches that lit their screens, like muzzle flashes in a night fight. The same color-coded destination stickers, the same shell company naming conventions, the same GPS avoidance corridors that deliberately danced around every license plate reader and weigh station camera on the interstate grid, the same Panamanian registered agent on every incorporation paper. Every signature recovered in Florida now glowed on maps stretching from the Gulf Coast to the Canadian border. The warehouse had never been a lone tumor. It had been the complete anatomical chart, and every remaining organ now carried identical DNA. A national emergency takedown directive dropped with a priority code normally reserved for active school shootings or imminent weapons of mass destruction events. Execution window: 38 minutes from transmission to first ram. Hard breach only. No advanced surveillance warnings. No federal observers. No negotiation channels. If any single node received even 30 seconds of advance notice, the remaining organism could initiate total cellular shutdown and vanish into the American landscape by nightfall. Houston, 8:12 a.m. Central. 2 up-armored Bearcats accelerated from opposite ends of a leased industrial complex, tires screaming as they punched straight through chained perimeter gates without touching the brakes, sparks cascading across asphalt like welding arcs. Simultaneous hydraulic rams struck adjacent roll-up doors in perfect synchronization. Steel panels folded inward with a sound that registered on local seismographs. Inside, stunned loaders froze between towering pallets while weapon-mounted lights carved blinding white tunnels through decades of dust. A forklift driver floored it toward a side exit and rammed straight into a parked DEA Tahoe that had already sealed the escape route. Overhead, 2 loadout supervisors sprinted across the catwalks. HRT operators on the mezzanine ended the foot chase with pinpoint taser deployments before the suspects reached the ladder rungs. 91,000 pounds of vacuum-sealed 70 sat pre-staged beside 4 battery-powered forklifts, still ticking as their motors cooled from the overnight shift. Green and red destination stickers facing the dock doors like soldiers waiting for orders that would never come. Georgia, 9:28 a.m. Eastern, Georgia State Patrol. Tactical units converged on a private trucking yard, 38 miles east of Atlanta, while two unmarked 53-foot trailers were literally inching toward the highway on-ramp. Drivers already in the cabs and engines idling. Patrol chargers boxed the rigs in a perfect X-block that left no escape vector. Drivers abandoned their tractors and scattered across a soybean field. A circling Black Hawk dropped to treetop level, rotor wash flattening crops in a perfect circle, while SWAT operators fast-roped directly into their path. Manifests declared 40-ton loads of agricultural lime bound for Tennessee distributors, yet seal numbers, weight tickets, and even the font on the bill of lading matched Florida templates character for character. Cutting teams worked 7 continuous minutes with reciprocating saws, peeling back false floors that ran the entire length of each trailer to reveal double-stacked product wrapped in the identical black plastic and color-coded tape recovered 8 hours earlier in Brevard County, North Carolina, 9:51 a.m. A silent column of Suburbans rolled lights out down a red clay farm road outside Fayetteville and halted a quarter-mile short of the target. HRT ghosted through pine thickets, while a Reaper orbiting at 22,000 feet fed real-time thermal imagery of a cold concrete void buried beneath what appeared to be an ordinary equipment shed. Breachers dropped through a false floor into a climate-controlled continuity bunker stocked with reserve product bricks, vacuum-packed cache bricks totaling 7 figures, encrypted Inmarsat satellite uplinks, and a ring-bound manual titled Blue Route, Phase 2 Failover, complete with pre-written press releases designed to blame the entire Florida raid on a fictitious rival cartel. The site had been engineered to assume full command and control responsibility within 6 hours of losing contact with the mother node. New York City, 10:05 a.m. A third-floor walk-up office in Long Island City, registered to an 11-week-old Delaware consulting firm, surrendered the moment the door exploded off its hinges. 12 hardware wallets were still tumbling coins through privacy chains when agents flowed in. 4 rack-mounted mixing servers glowed warm in the closet, and a wall-sized ledger printed on butcher paper reconciled every incoming payment recorded in the Florida laptop down to the last Satoshi. The financial circulatory system that had kept every processing hub, every driver, every port facilitator, and every offshore accountant paid on schedule was now clinically dead. Every rated location, regardless of geography or function, presented identical forensic fingerprints within the first hour. The network had franchised an entire shadow corporation across sovereign state lines, each division optimized for its role, yet engineered to regenerate limited function if another was severed. By 11:30 a.m., the national tally stood at 247,000 pounds, seized 52 high-value custody arrests, 41 tractor trailers immobilized under federal wraps, and 14 cryptocurrency wallets frozen mid-transaction. The coldest revelation came during final evidence sweeps. Captured drivers and mid-level facilitators carried laminated routing packets dated 3 and 4 days into the future, already annotated around the precise facilities currently being dismantled on live helicopter news feeds. They had rehearsed disruption. They had budgeted for it. They simply had never rehearsed total, simultaneous amputation across every limb in the same 38-minute window. For the first time since the machine had awakened years earlier, it was blind, broke, and hemorrhaging from every severed artery at once. Yet every senior commander walking those blood-wet floors understood one crystalline truth. The architecture they had just crippled had never been designed to die in a single morning. It had been designed to evolve, and evolution requires only time, darkness, and the next quiet warehouse nobody is watching. When the last tactical element exfiltrated, and the echo of armored boots finally dissolved into the Florida dawn, the warehouse did not feel conquered. It felt disemboweled yet still breathing. Floodlights replaced muzzle flashes, mobile command trailers rolled through the breached doors, and parked exactly where conveyor lines had once carried freshly sealed bricks toward waiting trucks. Forensic technicians in Tyvek moon suits now walked the same paths that operators in black balaclavas had used only hours earlier. What had been engineered for absolute secrecy now lay exposed under 20,000 watts of federal illumination, every surface numbered, photographed, and cataloged as evidence in a case that no longer possessed a case number small enough to fit on a standard jacket. The production floor became a dissection table. Chemical analysts reconstructed the workflow station by station. Raw precursor entered through mislabeled side bay doors, moved into stainless steel mixers where cutting agents were introduced under negative pressure hoods, proceeded across perforated drying racks under infrared arrays calibrated to within 1 degree, then fed into vacuum chambers that compressed finished product to brick density in under 40 seconds. Output calculations, once theoretical, now carried the cold certainty of physical evidence. At sustained operation, this single facility could process and package 4 metric tons every 72 hours, a throughput that rivaled legitimate pharmaceutical plants in New Jersey and matched only by the largest Cartel superlab south of the border. Digital forensics teams worked in parallel, forming silent clusters around rows of seized laptops and encrypted drives arranged on folding tables like surgical instruments. Each device surrendered another layer. Offshore payment waterfalls that split single wire transfers into thousands of sub-9,999 cryptocurrency movements, driver rosters with biometric photographs and next-of-kin data used for leverage, contingency playbooks that detailed exactly how long each regional manager had to initiate scorched earth protocols before federal arrival windows closed. One encrypted partition, missed on the first pass, contained quarterly projection slides titled Phase 3 Continental Saturation, complete with color-coded maps showing 8 additional processing hubs scheduled to come online within 18 months, each sited within 30 miles of a major interstate nexus, and each already leased under newly minted Delaware LLCs. The Armory, once the most immediate lethal threat, now served as testament to strategic patience. Weapons technicians cataloged rifles equipped with registered full auto sears acquired through straw purchases spanning 4 calendar years, suppressors manufactured on ghost-gunned CNC mills in unmarked garages, and enough composition C4 to reduce the entire structure to rubble in under 6 seconds. Remote detonators recovered from ceiling voids had been wired to seismic sensors calibrated to distinguish between forklift traffic and the heavier footfall pattern of federal breaching teams. The operators had not merely planned for defeat, they had choreographed it. Most unsettling were the expansion files discovered on a thumb drive hidden inside a hollowed-out fire extinguisher bracket. Site surveys for future facilities included soil reports, utility load analyses, local law enforcement response times scraped from public records, and projected hiring pools drawn from recently discharged military personnel with clearance histories. Recruitment pipelines already extended into 3 veterans assistance nonprofits, whose boards contained no idea their donor lists were being mined for talent. Financial models attached to each survey assumed full operational capability within 90 days of breaking ground and projected return on investment timelines measured in weeks, not years. By late afternoon, the command post whiteboards carried a new organizational chart drawn entirely from seized data. Maritime importation cells, air cargo relay teams, domestic processing divisions, interstate transport battalions, financial laundering directorates, and a small but distinct counterintelligence branch tasked with monitoring federal task force rotations, the way hedge funds monitor earnings calendars. Every division operated under standalone leadership, yet answered to a single executive node whose identity remained protected behind 3 layers of dead-drop communication protocols. Senior agents circulating through the warehouse no longer spoke of a cartel or even a syndicate. They spoke of a parallel economy, one that had studied legitimate supply chain management textbooks adopted just-in-time inventory principles, implemented Six Sigma quality control, and stress-tested its own resilience the way Fortune 500 companies test data centers. The machine they had crippled possessed research and development roadmaps, succession plans, and contingency capital reserves parked in bearer instruments across 5 continents. The raid had severed the spine, yes, but spines can heal. And the organism they now understood with chilling clarity had already begun writing the code for its next incarnation long before the first Bearcat ever crashed the gate. The warehouse was dead. The architecture was very much alive. Within 48 hours, the network began devouring itself. Loading docks that had hummed through the night went dark without ceremony. Forklifts sat abandoned mid-aisle, pallets untouched, bay doors left yawning open to morning light. Entire container yards registered to shell companies emptied overnight. Only oil stains and scattered shrink wrap remained as evidence that 40-ton trailers had ever existed. Offshore servers hosting routing dashboards displayed 404 errors by sunrise. Cryptocurrency wallets that once cycled millions daily flatlined to zero movement. Mid-level facilitators vanished from known addresses. Burner phones went dead in perfect synchronization, and safehouse landlords received wire transfers labeled early lease termination before federal search warrants could even be typed. Communities closest to the raided sites learned the full scope only when local news choppers lingered too long. Families 30 yards from the Florida warehouse discovered that a .50 caliber position had been zeroed on their children's bus stop. North Carolina farmers found concrete bunkers beneath neighboring fields stocked with enough explosives to erase an entire county courthouse. The invisible neighbor everyone assumed was legitimate had been fortifying for war. Federal response accelerated in lockstep. Treasury froze every LLC traced to the network. Customs flagged every port code ever used, and joint task forces scheduled to rotate out were quietly extended another 18 months. The vulnerabilities that allowed an entire shadow corporation to metastasize inside the United States were now cataloged as national security gaps. The machine had entered self-preservation mode and chosen amputation over capture. Yet every site it abandoned left behind forensic residue that pointed to the next. The purge was fast. It was not fast enough. The architecture was exposed, its growth cycle interrupted, and for the first time in years, the continent could see the full silhouette of what had almost become permanent. When a criminal machine this sophisticated can lease American warehouses, hire American veterans, move hundreds of tons past American ports, and defend itself with crew-served weapons on American soil, the threat is no longer measured in kilos seized or arrests made. It is measured in how close a parallel state came to rooting itself inside the Republic before anyone noticed. This was never just a drug network. It was a proof of concept, an entire shadow economy built with corporate efficiency, military discipline, and global reach, capable of regenerating faster than traditional law enforcement can retool. The raids bought time, they did not buy closure. Somewhere tonight, new LLCS are being filed in Delaware. New warehouses are being surveyed within 30 miles of interstate junctions, and new routing tables are being written to avoid the exact mistakes exposed in Florida. The only force capable of stopping the next iteration is a unified national response that learns, adapts, and strikes at the same speed the machine does. That response starts with awareness. If this story shook you, share it. If it angered you, subscribe to Military Power and stay for what comes next. Because the next breach is already being planned, and this time they know exactly where we looked last.